So welcome everyone, and our parsha this week is chock full of laws, Parshat Mishpatim. So it's a paradise for legal scholars. I mean, dozens of laws, civil laws, criminal laws, a few ritual laws. So, but today we'll see how even these dry laws can connect to past events in the book of Genesis. And the title of our class today is Can Laws Help Correct Past Mistakes? So let's start with a game. We haven't played a game in a long time. The game is going to be all these laws, sometimes called the covenant collection, 67 verses. Some of them are in the second tense singular. Some of them are written in the second tense plural, talking to the entire people. Some of them third tense singular, and some of them in the third tense plural. And then we're going to see something surprising. So I'll show you a law, and you tell me first, second person, singular, second plural, third tense, etc. That's going to be, we'll start with that game. So okay. Okay, so that's the title of our game. And here's the first law. So I'll read the Hebrew, and then you can read the English silently. V'chi ke'ish et ein avdo, o et ein amato v'shichata, l'chofshi yashalchenu tachat eino. So what do you say? Second person, third person?
Third person singular.
Okay, I agree. Aaron says that it's talking about a man. It's not saying you, and it's talking about what he should do, singular. He shall let him go free on account of his eye. Okay, so second person singular. How about another law?
Third person.
Third person. Sorry. Third person singular. How about this law? This is the opening of the covenant collection. כי תקנה עבד עברי, 6 שנים יעבוד, ובשביעית יצא לחופשי חינם.
So that's second person.
Okay.
Singular.
From the English, you can't tell. So this is another interesting point, a minor point. Every translation is also an interpretation, and it cannot fully capture what the Hebrew is saying. When you read the English, maybe they're talking to you, the general public. But no, you're right that it's second person singular. This word tikne is in the singular. So, and actually, I did see that one of the translations mentioned that. Okay, but let's look now at another law. So second person. How about this law? וגר לא תונה ולא תלחצנו, כי גרים הייתם בארץ מצרים. You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt.
It's the second person singular.
Okay, second person singular. That's half correct. What, Charlie? What do you want to say?
Yeah, that's at the start, but then it goes into kigerim heyitem.
Excellent. So yeah. There's both here. There's an interesting transformation. You, here's the singular. You shall not wrong a stranger. The words in red, that the Hebrew tells us that it's singular. But then in the reasoning, for you were strange in the land of Egypt, then it switches to plural. Ki gerim hitem, and also gerim is a plural. The ending im is plural. For you, plural, were strangers in the land of Egypt. So
yes, but that's not a command. That's just a
description. The description, yes, but but it could have said because you singular were a stranger in the land of Egypt.
Okay, sure.
Right? It could have said that.
Sure.
So the Torah wanted to emphasize you all were strangers. So even if you personally weren't, let's say you came from somehow you weren't, you don't feel that it happened to you. But the emphasis here is you are part of a nation that were strangers. So you are obligated, every one of you, to not oppress the stranger. Okay, so we call this both second person singular and second person plural. And now comes something surprising. This is called the do not, oh, hold on, wait, go back. Do not ill-treat the widow or the orphan. So do we have a volunteer to read the English? You shall not ill-treat any widow or orphan. If you do mistreat them, I will heed their outcry as soon as they cry out to me, and my anger shall blaze forth, and I will kill you by the sword, and your wives shall become widows and your children orphans. So first person.
Plural. Oh, lo te'anu, second person plural, with an object at the end.
Okay.
Lo te'anu
But the first
otam.
one,
Right. But something surprising is here. What's surprising that we didn't see up until now? You're right that the you is second person plural. You should not ill treat. And then it goes to singular, the you ane te'ane oto. But then what happens?
God is explaining what God will do.
It's a first person God.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Right? God intervenes. Think about it. These laws are given by Moses. He's telling the people, if you buy a Hebrew slave, here's the laws. If two people are fighting, here's the law. If you happen to kill somebody while you not unintended killer, here's the law. If you, he's talking. Suddenly, in the narrative, God intervenes. And it's like, this is so important that I'm going to intervene now. And it's God talking in the first person from here, from the cry out to me. Or from here, I will heed their outcry. Notice, Moses doesn't say God will heed their outcry and God will punish you. This shows the emphasis that the Torah wanted to put on this commandment. Now let's look at the punishment. What do you think about this punishment? If you ill-treat the widow and the orphan, I will kill you, and then your wives will become widows and orphans.
When it says your wives, plural, is that because it presupposes that a man has more than one wife, or is it talking about people in general?
I think it talks about people in general, but that's an interesting
the
point.
is plural, isn't it?
I think,
it's them. So he's talking. Yeah, that's plural, right?
Right.
So
right. But in terms of the justice done here, what kind of justice is this?
It's the original what goes around comes around.
Oh, so Natalie is thinking exactly like Rashbam. Rashbam, who lived in the 11th century, was Rashi's grandson, says 3 words on this punishment. Midah, neged, midah.
yeah.
Measure for measure.
Yes, right.
And when I think about it, I don't think I find it problematic. How is it going to help society that there will be new widows and orphans? They will also be oppressed. In other words, I don't think this kind of punishment ever influenced people not to do evil. If they didn't care about, in the first place, about mistreating the widows and their orphans, how having more of them is going to now change their opinion?
I disagree. I think that it's very inducing of not doing the wrong thing, because it threatens your own. It threatens your own. You can mistreat somebody who is an other, but you don't want to see anything bad happening to your own.
Aha, interesting.
No, I agree with Natalie. I think it's a very effective way to keep people from doing bad things.
Okay.
A strong deterrent.
Okay.
It's deterrent, exactly.
Thank you. Deterrent.
Yeah. I see your point. I see it. And this could explain why God intervenes. Moses cannot guarantee or make
Right,
these kind of, right? Moses can't say, I know God will do this to you. That's a little bit megalomaniac if he would say that. So this is why we can explain the first person of God coming into this set of laws and saying, here's what I'm going to do. and you say it's a deterrent because now it's going to happen to you. Your own wives, your own children will be widows, orphans, and if you have a society,
not only your
Even-
wives and Shemai, not only your wives and children, but the person himself. That's also that's a pretty good deterrent, right?
Even if it isn't a deterrent to the person who is mistreating a widow and an orphan, even if it isn't a deterrent to them, and if in fact they do die and their wife becomes a widow and their children become orphans, if there's a cause and effect, it will have an effect on everybody that sees the cause and effect.
Right. That's
yeah.
right.
So that's the meaning of deterrence.
That's
Right?
a deterrent, right?
Right. Very good. Okay. So that is a very unique law, and interesting that out of all the laws, they chose this law. You know, God chose this law sort of to intervene. Now let's go to some more prosaic, or not prosaic, but laws, but kind of, I want to call them run of the mill, but they're not so run of the mill. I want to look at set of three laws and try to understand what's the logic of them being lumped together. So this is a set of three laws. The first is one who strikes their father or mother shall be put to death. The second one is, and if you steal a man, whether you are selling him or you still keep him in your possession, then he shall be put to death. And then the third one is, one who insults their father or mother shall be put to death. So what's the one doesn't make sense that it's there?
Third one doesn't make sense.
The third, why the third?
Because the first two are actions against people, and the third is just insult. It's not.
You're talking about, you find this too harsh. Okay, I agree with that. It's very, very harsh, and that's a subject that we can deal with when we talk about the blasphemer.
Well,
we're going to talk about why are we putting to death people for words? But in terms of subject matter, which one is out of place?
But Shemai, I still think that the first two deal with a person doing something, okay, and the third deals with someone saying something, right? That's why I think.
But he's saying it to his parents, and we already have been talking about hitting parents. So I think it follows directly from that. If you're going to give me the law about hitting parents, and you see, you're comparing to our laws today. This is biblical justice, biblical society. Okay, forget the harshness. It seems very, very cruel. But if you're giving me the law about hitting parents, then yeah, you need to give me the law about cursing parents. That does make sense to me. The middle one seems out of place.
Yes, because it's not a family member.
Right. So the middle one is not a family member. Why is it stuck in between those two? And now
because you're removing a family head.
No. Oh.
But the first
even if he doesn't have a family. No, this is the second applies to a single. If any person that you kidnapped and sold, it's a capital offense.
But if you're asking what the difference is, the first two are physical acts and the third is not.
That's exactly what I said, Madeline.
Yes, yeah.
So again, you're focused on why is there a punishment for a non-physical act that is similar to the other punishments. But I don't want to focus on the punishment right now. I want to look at the cases themselves. If you're an editor who's editing the laws and putting them together, you would put the parents' laws in one chapter. Then you would do another chapter of offenses to people in general, and then maybe you'd go from the more severe to the lesser severe, or the vice versa. Here it's like a mishmash. You started with parents, then you went into something totally unrelated, then you went back to parents, and then wait. Now let's go to another law. Then comes the law of the unintended harm to a pregnant woman. So here's what the Torah says. וכי ינצחו אנשים, ונגפו אישה הרה, ויצאו ילדיה, ולא יהיה אסון. אנוש ייענש כאשר ישית עליו בעל האישה, ונתן בפלילים. ואם אסון יהיה, ונתתה נפש תחת נפש. Do we have a volunteer to read the English?
Okay, when two or more parties fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined according as the woman's husband may exact, the payment to be based on reckoning. But if other damage ensues, the penalty shall be life for life.
So let's try to understand what's going on here. Two people were fighting, and unintended harm was caused, and one of them caused to a pregnant woman, and she had a miscarriage. And then there's two scenarios. One when there's no other damage ensues, and one other damage. How do you understand that?
Well, it's
So
a
it
harsh
means-
understanding, but basically, what I see is that the pregnant woman who merely has a miscarriage can become pregnant again. So the husband's property is only temporarily harmed. If other damage ensues, then the property is gone.
Yeah, but what is other damage
No,
ensues?
no,
She
Well, no,
won't be able to carry again. That's
Shema,
the assumption.
Oh,
Shemai, I see that the child in the womb is worth less than a person.
right.
That's exactly right. What Aaron said, that
Yeah,
the
yeah,
unborn
absolutely.
child
So,
is not yet a person.
right, he's not
and
a
the
person.
death of the
So there's no,
unborn
okay,
child is
so
not like a death of a person.
focus on the penalty life for life.
Yeah,
That's
the
that
it's second one.
so that's when the woman was killed. That's the other damage.
Or harmed to the point where she's no longer she can't have children again.
But then
That's my assumption there. Or
then you wouldn't have it wouldn't
damaged
become a
goods.
capital, it wouldn't become a capital offense then.
So,
It
so
can't,
Then
right,
what is the other damage?
so that's what we're gonna talk
That-
about. So yeah,
Shemai does a son in biblical Hebrew mean the same thing as a son in modern
oh,
Hebrew?
so okay, excellent point. So we're gonna get to that right now. So the word is a son, is a very unique word. It appears only one other place. Before that, Umberto Cassuto, the scholar, born in Italy, rabbi, and then a scholar of biblical studies at Hebrew University, said he studied Hammurabi laws, Hittite laws, and Assyrian laws, and saw that in their laws, I'm summarizing, he actually had each one a set of laws, and he explained it in his commentary. He said in their laws, that law of the unintended harm is different. Over in Hammurabi laws, it depends what class the woman victim belongs to. If she was part of the plebeians, what he calls miskenim, then it's only a monetary fine. So that's similar to our Torah law. But if she was part of the high society, a free woman, and okay, if only the fetus dies, then it's a fine. But if the woman dies, then you kill the striker's daughter. So what is the novelty of the Torah laws compared to these Hammurabi laws? How is the Torah laws different?
We kill the daughter, not the striker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's number two. The Torah never says you can only punish the offender, not the offender's family members, but also the Torah never made a distinction in the victim which class she belongs to. In the Hammurabi laws, if she was the plebeians, then even if it was the second case, what the other harm, so to speak, it's still only a monetary fine because she's only a plebeian. But came the Torah, and there was a novelty here that the same law will apply to all victims. Okay, but still, what is ason? What is that word ason? It appears in only one other place in the Torah. Where else does it appear? And here's a picture to give you a hint. Anyone want to give it a try? So this is Judah approaching Joseph, the viceroy, arguing to release Benjamin, who was framed for a crime that he did not commit, for stealing the gobbles.
Show that picture again. He looks very feminine looking, Judah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Threw us off.
Yeah. Um,
Okay.
Yeah, he does like, he's
yeah,
trying to look like a woman.
when you read the verses, he seems very aggressive, and that doesn't look like an aggressive Judah. So, yeah, I don't know who the painter is, but
Maybe he sent Tamar.
Good
Nah,
one.
just kidding.
okay. So how did he incorporate it into his speech? So let's look at his speech, and we'll see that that's the only place where you can find. And when he did it, he made it up. So he is saying to Joseph, you can't do this. You can't keep Benjamin here. Because when we told our father, Jacob, to bring him down, then Jacob said, no, you can't do this. And so this is Judah telling Joseph what Yaakov, his father, said to them. Now your servant, my father, said to us, you know yourselves that my wife bore two to me. One went away from me, and I said, for sure, he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him again thus far. Now, should you take away this one as well from before my face, should harm befall him, you will bring down my gray hair in ill fortune to Sheol. Should harm befall him. That's the ason. But Jacob actually never said that. This is Judah paraphrasing his own father in order to influence Joseph. He's making a much bigger deal than the words. I mean, I don't think that Jacob thought of it as a small deal, but it's interesting that he used this word ason, even though Jacob himself did not use it. And then he uses it again. Oh, and then there's another thing interesting here. And then he says to him, and if I come back without Benjamin, when I come back to your servant, my father, and the lad, Benjamin, is not with us, benafsho kshua benafsho, with whose life is bound up, with whose life, his own life, is bound up. Nefesh against nefesh. We just had that in the law of the unintended harm to the pregnant woman, right? So the other translations are of ason are misfortune, mischief, but I like the Mitsuda. Wait. I saw disaster. I saw somewhere disaster.
I mean, that's what it means in modern Hebrew.
Right.
Accident.
So,
Yeah.
but here it's clearly like he's going to lose his life. So, there it is. He meets with disaster. JPS 1985. If you take this one from me too, and he meets with disaster, you will say, there you go. Ason in this translation is disaster. So, bearing that in mind, let's see, is there a connection between this law and the Joseph story? That's what I want to. We saw two interesting connections. We saw that there was nefesh against nefesh. That was right. That was the language that the Torah used in here. The penalty shall be life for life, but the Torah uses nefesh tachar nefesh, not the word chayim. So that was one connection to that story. And then the other connection was the word ason. And again, it doesn't appear anywhere else in the Torah. Only here in this law and in that speech that Yehuda said to Joseph. So what should we make of it? So I think there's an interesting drash, and I want to bring in the people from Aleph Beta. So I think we're going to just watch a little bit of that today, and next week we'll continue. We'll reinforce the questions this week, and we'll give the answer next week.
Umakeh aviv v'imo mot yumat. If someone strikes their father or mother, they shall be put to death. V'gonev ish umicharo v'nimtza v'yado. And if someone kidnaps another person and sells them, and they're found guilty, mot yumat, they too get the death penalty. Then umekalel aviv v'imo. If someone curses their parents, mot yumat, they're also put to death. Okay, let's stop right here for a second and play a little game that we at Aleph Beta call Which of These Things is Not Like the Other? We've got a verse about hitting parents, then a verse about kidnapping, and then a verse about cursing parents. So which one doesn't fit? If you said kidnapping, you've got it. It seems entirely out of place. It's stuck in between two verses about parents. It totally breaks the flow. Why didn't the Torah just teach us the laws about hitting parents and cursing parents, and then move on to tell us about kidnapping? So that's our first question. And let's just file that away for now, and we'll come back to it after we see a bit more of this section of laws. The verses continue with more laws about people hurting each other. Some guys who are fighting, someone who hits their servant, and then we get to the following scenario. V'chi yinatzu anashim v'nagfu isha hara. Some men are fighting, and they inadvertently hit a pregnant woman. V'yatzu yiladeha. As a result, she has a miscarriage. So what's the punishment for that? Well, it depends. V'lo yiyeh ason. If the assault causes a miscarriage but doesn't kill the woman herself, the men are punished with a fine in court. However, im ason yiyeh, if the woman also dies, v'natata nefesh tachat nafesh. You shall give a soul in exchange for a soul. Now, there are some strange things going on here. Let's start with that last line, a soul for a soul. It's become a somewhat famous phrase about biblical punishment, but what does it mean? Is it just a poetic way of saying, off with their heads? Well, it doesn't seem so, because throughout these verses, we keep hearing about the death penalty, but each time the Torah uses the words mot yumat, the person shall be put to death. So nefesh tachat nafesh, a soul for a soul, seems to be saying something else. But what? And on the topic of strange language, look at how the Torah describes the death of the mother. Im ason yihiyeh. Literally, if a tragedy takes place. The Torah could have said that as a result of the miscarriage, the pregnant woman might die, im tamut, or she may be killed, im tehareg. But instead it uses this ambiguous phrase, a tragedy, an ason, which is a really unusual word in the Torah. It's so rare, in fact, that it only appears in one other place in the entire Torah. Where is the other place ason pops up? Well, the only other mention of ason is actually in the story of Joseph and his brothers, in the epic speech Judah gave right before Joseph revealed his true identity to them. Posing as a merciless Egyptian official, Joseph was threatening to keep Benjamin as his prisoner for stealing his cup. Judah was horrified about what this would do to their father Jacob, and he begged Joseph to reconsider. He repeated his father's fears of sending Benjamin down to Egypt. Jacob had told them, V'karahu ason, if Benjamin suffers an ason, v'horadatem et sevati b'ra'ah she'ola, I will go down to my grave in misery. So you might say, big deal, ason here, ason there, that doesn't tell us anything. They're both tragic stories, so that's the word that's used. And if this were all that's here, I'd agree with you. But here's the thing, if we read these texts side by side, Judah's speech about Jacob and Benjamin, and those verses about the pregnant woman in Mishpatim, there are a lot more connections between them. Ason is just the tip of the iceberg. Let's take a look. When Judah was pleading with Joseph to free Benjamin, he recounted the entire conversation between Jacob and the brothers before they left for Egypt. Jacob said, Atem yidatem ki shnayim yaldali ishti. You know that my wife Rachel bore me two sons, Joseph and Benjamin. Vayetze ha'echad me'iti, and I've lost one of them. Those words, yatsa me'iti, are a bit odd. Literally, they mean that one child came out of me. And these words actually have a very specific connotation, which comes up in the verses we saw back in Mishpatim. The pregnant woman is hit v'yatzu yiladeha, and her children come out of her. This is how the Torah describes a miscarriage. And strangely, it's the same way Jacob talks about losing Joseph. Why would that be? And it gets even stranger, because if we think about those words in Mishpatim, yatzu yiladeha, it means that the woman loses her children in the plural. Why would the Torah speak about a miscarriage this way? How often is a pregnant woman carrying more than one fetus? It just doesn't make sense. But oddly, it does mirror Jacob's words. He said, Rachel bore me two sons. I've lost one of them, and now I might lose the second one too. The parallels continue. The next thing Jacob said, Vikarahu ason. What if Benjamin suffers an ason? As we said, it's the same tragedy that may befall the mother in Mishpatim. If that happens, Judah says, Vinafsho kshura benafsho. Jacob's soul is bound up with Benjamin's soul. V'haya kiroto ki ein hanar v'amet. If Jacob loses Benjamin, he's going to die too. Nafsho kshura benafsho. It's eerily similar to the end of those verses in Mishpatim. Nefesh tachat nafesh. One soul for the other, which is also a consequence of an ason taking place. And now that we've seen all this, let's go back to that verse we were wondering about before. Gonev ish umicharo. Someone who kidnaps a person and then sells them. Well, what does that remind us of? It sure sounds a lot like what happened to Joseph. The brothers took him from his father, threw him into a pit, and sold him as a slave. So for some inexplicable reason, this little section of laws in Mishpatim has echoes of both the beginning and end of the struggle between Joseph and his brothers. From the kidnapping and sale of Joseph, all the way to Judah's speech that ultimately brought the brothers and Joseph back together again.
Okay, so we're going to remain with a question tonight. The eerie similarities to the beginning of the Joseph story, stealing the brother and selling him, to the end of the story with these linguistic connections. And next week, we will offer a very interesting drash. So thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Very interesting, very much.
Keep us in
Yep.
suspense.
Yes, leave everybody in suspense.